Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. In this video, I will be discussing how top bass is supposed to sound. And welcome back. So, I've got a picture here of a good bass unit. That's the Verity Sarastro speaker. They're some of the better bass speakers that I've heard on the market around the top. So I'm just going to show you some pictures here. This is what good bass sounds like. You're here on Earth and you can hear stuff happening on several planets, and you can hear the distance between those effects. So you can probably hear like, this is just to give you an image of what it sounds like. Good bass sounds like something happening far, far away, but you can hear it, the distance coming towards you in its different layers, different levels of quality. It gives you like this sense of space that's just extraordinary. Like the soundstage is just endless. So that's why I chose this picture here. So and this is like what good middle class bass sounds like. Good reaction, probably on this boat here, and you can hear this volcano erupting, and you can hear that it's sending stuff away, and it's hitting the nearby village, it's hitting the water, it's flying past you. You know, it's a sense of realism, that you're engrossed in some kind of event. And this is what bad bass sounds like. This is the do-it-yourself redneck bass that a lot of people like to do, where they have big units in their car and they run this really unsophisticated thumpy music, and it sounds out of phase, and has really bad timing, and it just farts sound waves with a lot of pressure. And that, in a sense, is kind of cool, especially when you're young, having that wind blow at you. But it's just overwhelming, terribly unsophisticated, and you can only play this very horrible kind of music, very beat-driven music. And there's just no layering, there's no sophistication. You can't really play proper music on it. It's just sound effects, basically. And so that's what I hear a lot when I hear the very cheapest sound systems with the speakers. I remember starting with some Daily 8008 speakers, really cheap speakers in the low end, and the bass would just be like random farting noises. And even though there was quite a lot of bass, it was thumpy, it was loose. It managed to be dark, but still at the same time very bright. It was just all over the place, and that's a very good example. Or any random B&W speaker in the lowest range that is like 20-30 years old. Also, for me, that's a horrible sound. Or any regular random speaker that's generally in the couple of hundreds of dollars. There's just a lot of really, 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 really bad speakers out there. And let me just go over to the text here, just to describe what I've heard. So, bass in a very simple setup is very thumpy, and it's just a lot of random, loose sounds. Generally, the more that you pay for a good speaker, the more clean it gets, the more tight it becomes. But it also integrates with the middle range and the treble, so you don't feel that there are holes between these three objects. So they don't become separate sound units with holes in between. So that's something to listen for. And I would say that most basic speakers only have like 1 to 3 types of bass sounds that are really basic. And a really good speaker can do what feels like 100 different modes. So together with this, there's a lot of quality about the detail layering and the depth, where a normal speaker will only have like what I feel is like 10 levels, and a really good speaker probably has like, I don't know, 500. So remember that when there's a bass sound, it has to feel as if it's traveling a distance. So it's starting high, it's going towards the middle, and then it's going towards the bottom. And then if it's a really good speaker, it feels as if it's hit the bottom, and there's still a lot more to go, which kind of shocks you. So this is kind of this like aftershock effect, a bit like when you're listening to a subwoofer and you're watching a film, and you have this sound effect where a car crashes and it goes from like the left channel to the right channel, and then it just goes this aftershock effect. That's very important to have. And if you had a really good speaker, it would be a bit like feeling as if you lived at the top apartment in your building, like let's say the 5th or the 10th floor or something like that, and you were being like crushed by something, and it was pulling you down onto the 9th floor, the 8th floor, the 7th floor, and so on. It's like pulling you down, and you can feel like that effect there. Or it's a bit like if you're in a plane and it's crashing, and you're just being sucked through the window and just going down. That kind of feeling. So it's the feeling of different plateaus, that it's not just a sound effect just going oof, hitting you, but it kind of drags you with it. And at a very high level, it responds a lot like two rocks like hitting each other really hard, firmly, tight, and clean. I remember first time I listened to the top 5 audio note speakers that are way above the the audio note speaker that I have. But once you get into this top audio note A&E speaker line, and you go with like the top 5 models, the bass reaction is very different from the model that I have. It's just insane how hard it hits you, but not that it's harsh to listen to. It's like this sophisticated, sophisticated, hard reaction with almost like two rocks hitting each other. Woof, like that. You also get it a bit with these very big speakers, like Rockport speakers. They have these cabinets inside where it's like aluminium reinforced cabinets, and it gives you like this rock hard bass response. You also get it with Wilson audio speakers, Peak Consult speakers. Those are one of the few things that they do that's just ridiculously good, and it just keeps you like almost paralyzed and hypnotized. Like, give me more of that, because it's just so firm, but still so deep, but not hard on your ears. It's almost like shooting a shotgun off in a living room, but not where it hurts your ears, but it's just instantaneous, but with really good depth and layering, and it just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And again, the transitioning from the bass to the middle range also has to be smooth. You can't hear the filter changing frequency where it's like going from the bass to the middle range to the treble. It's just one whole detail. See, what you get with a lot of shows and people pairing what is supposed to be very high quality equipment, you get this like this like glancy effect where in fact you have a lot of detail, but it's only on the surface. It doesn't penetrate and go through and convince you as if this is an actual thing happening on planet Earth. It just sounds like it's from some kind of sci-fi movie happening over there, just completely unrealistic, and then just going zoom, 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 choo, choo, all over the place. And that's what I hear a lot when I listen to, for example, I'm not a big fan of Nordost cables, but Nordost can actually sound pretty good. But what I hear a lot is that when people introduce Nordost cables on regular systems, is that you get this like zoom zoom effect where you've got fast detail, a lot of detail, shininess, but it's only on the surface. It doesn't feel like it's information traveling throughout the whole cable. It just feels like it's like a glance effect. I had this same problem when I was trying dual on silver cables, and it was like this, it wasn't a silver thread, but it's like the silver cable thing that Dualon do, where they have, when they've got these like strips of silver, and you get the same effect where you get the glance effect of the detail. You don't get the full substance of it, and that's what I mean when I write that. You get this like 2 to 6 dB shininess and decibel increase, like a guitar suddenly going like vroom, being psyched up, and that's not what really good sound sounds like. Now, I'm not here to talk bad about Nordost, okay? That's what I hear when a lot of people introduce Nordost to systems because they don't fully integrate them. I have heard Nordost at their highest level cables when it's fully integrated with, for example, this Verity Sarastro speaker that I showed you before. It has Nordost Odin cable inside, and soon as you start matching equipment that's like almost made for each other, then you get the integrating effect. Then the substance goes fully through instead of you just getting the fast detail, you know? So that's not what we want. We don't want the fast detail where we just get the movements. We want the deep, penetrating detail where it feels like this is a human being standing in front of me. This is an instrument. This is actual wood that is interacting with the, what's it called? The strings. And it's not plastic strings. It's real expensive strings, you know? And you start hearing these types of details when you do things properly and you go up and you pay for proper gear. But let me just say... And then you start hearing things like intention and mistakes that the artist makes, but you're still able to enjoy it, okay? A lot of supposedly really good systems can't make you enjoy music because they just splatter detail all over the place. You know, it's like a freak show with like detail. You want it to be real detail so you can enjoy everything, even a bad recording. Yes, I mean, if you have an extremely bad recording, of course it can be very difficult to enjoy it. But there is a sense of artistry where things can still exist as long as you can hear them as being real and not pieces of information. Then you can actually listen to some pretty bad recordings and still enjoy it. So I remember it's a sign of bad components in a system when the sound just pumps out. I heard from a friend recently that he was experimenting with some clock technology, and he said to me, very, very, very interesting, he said to me, if I use a cheap cable with cheap plugs, the sound just pumps out. And I just thought, wow, this guy's brilliant. He really understood it at a deep level. And that's exactly what happens when you're listening to cheap components that are low quality. The sound just pumps out. He said it. It took me many years to realize this, but he said it. Sound just pumps out. I tried so many cheap eBay plugs, and I was constantly thinking, what the hell is this? This doesn't sound good. But I can't really, figure it out with my mind. what the hell is going on? And that's the key thing to look out for when you're listening to bad sound. It just pumps sound out. There's no significance. There's no reason for listening to it. It's just data. The timing is really bad, and that's the thing. I'm going to cover this in a different video. Quality components have a certain type of timing. So when you have high quality copper, gold, silver, not the regular stuff, but the really good stuff, there is a sort of timing that focuses the music. And because it's able to focus it, detail is presented in a way when you are allowed to travel deep into the picture. And suddenly it doesn't just fart sound and pumps it out. This is a crucial piece of information that I hope you guys can somehow understand. It's very difficult when you haven't heard it in real life, but I spent many years wasting money on cheap equipment. I also wasted money on a lot of expensive equipment that was supposed to be high quality, but this is like the indicator of what you are listening to. If it just pumps sound out, then you know somewhere on your chain you've either got cheap cables, cheap plugs, some kind of maybe cheap amp, CD, DAC, speaker, whatever. It could be that it's the room that's to blame. It could be the speakers aren't properly angled in. I mean, you have to kind of look at everything, but it's an indicator that something is completely wrong. And you can't always blame the recording. Most recordings are actually good enough. They are good enough, but they can seem as if they don't matter, and then as if they are irrelevant. And that's what bad components do. Sound pumps out, and the music seems irrelevant. If it doesn't make you want to listen to music for hours and you can't get yourself to turn off the equipment, then you know somewhere in your system there are some cheap quality components, and you could possibly pay only a small amount of money for some high quality components that don't cost very much. But it normally doesn't happen, you know. I mean, CMC plugs, those are one of the few exceptions. V-bolt plugs, they're a bit more expensive, but I mean, again, one of the few exceptions of things that are pretty high quality compared to the price class. But, you know, in order for me to deal with things like this, I just don't compromise. I choose the best plugs, which are either Audio Note silver plugs, top plugs, or I choose Oyade plugs, the Japanese manufactured plugs. Almost all plugs that I know that have been produced in China somehow end up having a really nasty side to themselves. It might be that they fix the sound, giving you a more warmish, mellow middle range, but typically it kind of loses its sex appeal, its drive, it's like, look at me and this is the most important thing, and where it puzzles your mind in a good way, you know? You just kind of lose that. Okay, I was going a bit off track there, so sorry for doing that. But that's one of the reasons why I don't run with Fruitake plugs. Fruitake do a lot of good stuff in the sound, don't get me wrong, especially when you're paying for the more expensive Fruitake plugs. My God, do they do some stuff that I envy sometimes in my Oyade plugs, but it's a bias effect, okay? It creates the illusion of more bandwidth and black level and separation, but just get this, it's not real. You can't play real music. You end up just listening to music like from year 2000 and onwards that is normalized, has a lot of compression, and has a lot of auto-tune, and is put into a grid in a sound recording program, so that everything just sounds kind of fake. And I mean, it's really annoying, because the Fruitake do some really good stuff where with the sound. I like the effect of extra bandwidth that FluidTech creates, and the warmer type of sound. It's more forgiving, but again, it's less honest. It doesn't react, and it's kind of putting a band-aid on all the problems without really dealing with it. So yeah, sorry, I'll continue. And remember that typically the bigger the bass units get, usually the more thumpy ness it delivers, and the less it will integrate on a micro detail level. And this is why many cheaper big speakers simply can't play music, but only can play beats like music. Yeah, because normal music that is good just ends up sounding awkward, and then you think as a listener, oh, this is probably just a bad track on Spotify or whatever you're getting your music from. But no, every single piece of music in the world, almost every piece of music, is supposed to some degree make you admire it and think, wow, this is good somehow, eh? There really is almost an endless amount of music that is really, really good. And it's basically only your sound equipment keeping you from realizing that potential. So that's what I discovered. It took me about 20 years to discover that, but almost all music in the world you will pretty much like that. And I'm talking about hideous stuff, even like Behemoth or Prodigy or Metallica. That Metallica is like has some really hard recordings in the it's like a basement type of echoish harshness to the sound, but they can actually sound very good, very, very good, even on CD. So it's just to let you guys know that it does exist. So, and even top brands with extremely expensive speakers also to some degree have a huge problem with true intimacy and integration and handling detail, instead of going with this like fireworks show where it just like overwhelms you with effect, like boom, 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 give him some bass, and it's like, yeah, it's really cool, it's really mellow, it can handle a lot of stuff. I find big speakers in general with a lot of units and big that have big unit bases, like going from 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 inch bass units, these just don't integrate. They can't play a wide variety of music. They just play certain types of music. And yes, they do sound really awesome many times, but you're limiting your choice of music when you're going with these speakers. You can't listen to like a random Dolly Parton song or Emmylou Harris or a John Denver song or a Tears for Fears song or a regular CD track of a Cranberries or the Cure kind of music. It just becomes I don't want that. It just comes like flat and not integrated. It only tunes in to dynamic music, and it takes the whole focus away from music, and it like divides it into these separate frequency points, and then they just all do their thing, run in this hi-fi mode. So just to let you guys know of that thing really happening a lot in the hi-fi world. So remember that a speaker will deliver a sound effect to you through a filter that has a certain repeating sound characteristic, and a true high-class speaker will not go to these cheap lengths. A true speaker just disappears. I think I misspelled that. Yeah. Where a good speaker, there you get the effect of less is more, in a good way. So when you listen to units like that are made of Kevlar, ceramic drivers, plastic drivers, ribbon tweeters, or other stuff like rubbery units, you often get I'm generalizing. This is not always the case, but you often get to hear a certain effect through that type of unit, which affects everything you listen to. So, with Kevlar, for example, I mean, it had a really nice, tight bass, nice slam and stuff like that, but it would just be kind of unnatural and muffled and just awkward with really good intimate music, you know? You wouldn't be hearing Alison Krauss or Emmylou Harris or really good and sweet music. You wouldn't be hearing that. You would just constantly be in your Dire Straits mode and your Drake music and your Rihanna music and the stuff like that. And you listen to some good guitar music. It would all be effect based music. And it's kind of the same thing when I listen to normal ceramic driver speakers. There's a speaker manufacturer that I just remembered now, and it's called Gouda. And it's one of the most horrible speaker brands that I have ever heard. Really expensive speakers. They look very nice, very expensive, lots of units and all of that. And it's just so cold, so meaningless. That's for me like one of the worst sounds out there in the expensive area. I mean, there might be people who are able to tame that sound somehow, and it could be that it's still a relatively good speaker, but I have not been able to hear that speaker sound good in any way. It always sounded to me like a hi-fi freak show. So apologize if any of those guys are watching this video. I don't mean to insult them, but that's how I hear it. And with a lot of plastic driven speakers, I heard some monitor audio speakers, yeah, and the lowest range speaker, and absolutely fantastic speaker. It gave you a hell of a lot for your money, but there was this, you could hear the plastic drivers moving. You could hear it, that movement. Oh, it just drove me crazy. And a lot of cheap speakers do this, that incorporate certain technologies. You hear the via method, the thing that's delivering the sound, and you're not supposed to hear that. That thing is supposed to disappear. And ribbon tweeters, again, has a tendency of being very much this way or that way, with a very narrow soundstage where you have to really place yourself a certain place between the speakers in a certain type of room, or else you don't get any of the details. But individual pieces of information are just ridiculously good and really fast sounding. And one of the best ribbon tweeters I've ever heard is the one in the picture above, you know, from the Verity Sarastro speaker. Fantastic ribbon tweeter. That's probably the best ever ribbon tweeter I have ever heard. And by the way, diamond tweeter. I haven't heard many diamond tweeters in the world that actually sounded really, really good at a high level and was pretty natural. I have heard one, and that was the Martin Design Bird one ribbon tweet. No, not ribbon. Diamond tweeter. Fantastic diamond tweeter. If you ever want to hear a really good diamond tweeter, when I listen to diamond tweeters from B&W in their older range, I'm just thinking, oh my god, what is this? You know, it's just so isolated a sound from the middle range and the bass. It's just like a random sound thing, and it feels as if it's just harsh, but it's kind of been rolled off, but in this kind of plastic limited kind of way. Yeah, annoying. Sometimes it can actually sound pretty good, these diamond tweeters from B&W in certain top models. I have heard this a couple of times, very few times, but sometimes it can actually sound pretty okay. So yeah, you don't want to hear individual pieces of detail, okay? You want to have stuff disappear, so you don't hear what's generating the sound and how it's doing it. And therefore, paper units are usually more neutral, more warm. Yes, they also have a tendency of not quite revealing the same amount of detail compared to many of these other drivers that I just shared with you. And I know that this is a tweeter, and and this was supposed to be a video about bass, so sorry for that, guys, but I just wanted to like assemble all of my thoughts and put it together so you guys could get an idea of how the whole thing works as a whole. So I'm sorry for that. But again, what I experienced when I had my Verity speaker, it had a bass unit that was firing backwards towards the wall, where the middle range and the treble were facing me where I was sitting. And to start with, before I got this speaker, this was like awesome. It had this like image that was almost thrown at the wall, that was so different from everything else that I had heard. And when you do this at a very high level, when you're paying for an expensive speaker like the Verity Sarastro, I mean, there it sounds really cool and awesome, but you also to some degree notice with certain types of music, especially rock music and what is that called? Punk music and like really hard types of music. You kind of notice a polite negotiation between the middle range and the bass. And I just didn't like that. And that's one of the reasons why I took an audio note speaker, because you have that like immediate puff reaction. So you're not throwing a bass towards the wall. So the wall has to throw it in the room and it has to go to you. It's worth considering this once you're getting your own speaker, and with the speaker that you have now, it can be a problem. I hear this quite a bit at a lot of people's places, is that a backfiring bass that goes towards the back end of the audio gear setup, it can have problems with timing. It creates some kind of a lag, and it can many times create a middle range that is artificially bright and mechanical and hi-fi. So that's one of the reasons why I have an audio note speaker, because 2 units, very short signal path, highest quality parts. You don't have a speaker that is slanted upwards with like a 5 or 10 degree angle. It's facing you directly, so you're getting the direct effect of the sound. Now, when you're not placing some good equipment on an audio note speaker, it can make it brutal. It can really make it brutal. But that's because it's an honest speaker. So just know this, that it probably takes a lot of tweaking if you haven't got some really good parts on an audio note speaker. But that is the honest, good, high quality sound. And that's why I took that speaker, because it was just driving me insane having to hear the bass through the back wall and then going throughout the whole room over to me. This kind of lag, I did not like it, and it created a huge difference between soundtracks. So I would listen to, for example, Steve Vai number that sounded ridiculously good, and then suddenly I would listen to like an Emmylou Harris song, and it was like, what the hell just happened here? Eh? Because you needed a certain type of bass for it to sound good, and yeah, it annoyed me, because when you're listening to a speaker, you're not supposed to be thinking like, oh, what's this, what's that, and what's going on. It's supposed to be so good that you just disappear into the sound, and yeah. So remember, timing, firmness, attack, and grunt. It can be really tough getting that with a backfiring speaker and generally a small speaker. If you have a small speaker with a small bass unit in a big room, I mean, timing, firmness, attack, and grunt will suffer a hell of a lot. So, yeah, just to let you guys know of all these thoughts that I had in my head. Nice to finally make a video about it so I don't have to think about it anymore. But these are key points for you to finding the type of sound that you really like. And you don't always have to take the most expensive gear. Actually, the middle expensive gear is what I usually consider some of the best gear out there. There are some overpriced things like Wilson audio speakers, Gouda speakers, Macintosh speakers. I mean, they all do isolated pieces of information really well, especially the Wilson ones, you know. It does deliver some really firm, informative sound, but generally no. I would think that a not the most expensive piece of equipment, but like the middle most expensive piece of equipment, coupled with these things that I mentioned, that's kind of the way that you want to go with your sound. So yeah, I hope this kind of helps you guys with your sound, identifying what's actually going on with the sound, because many times you can be stuck at a certain level because you've only heard the level that you're currently at. Once you break that level and you hear stuff at a friend's house that is much better, or in a store, a hi-fi show, or whatever, you suddenly begin to understand what's going on in your system, and then suddenly you can hear that, oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to sound. That's why I'm not listening to several hours of music every day, because it just sounds irrelevant. It sounds boring. It's just pumping sound out because of these individual things. So yeah, sometimes it's just a small thing. Sometimes you can actually have an okay setup. You haven't paid a lot of money for it, but it's just that small little thing gnawing away at you, you know, making you almost go insane. Because there are people with actually okay pieces of equipment, and they might not have paid more than a couple of $100 or $1,000 for the system, but it can actually still sound pretty good. Just taking all of these things into consideration. So yeah, a bit of a long rant. Sorry for that, guys, but yeah, that's all for today. And remember to like and subscribe, and try and get some of your friends to look at these videos, because I'm having a hard time getting into this YouTube algorithm kind of thing. I have to tell you guys that I'm one of the few guys on YouTube not making any money on having this channel. I'm just using all of my time, and it's a bit discouraging for me, the fact that I have so many high quality pieces of information that I want to share with the world. And so if you can somehow share this with your friends and some other guys, just to let them know what's going on, so we don't have to have this normal voice of hi-fi going through all the other channels, because we know most of all the other channels, they are in the pockets of the industry, and they will only highlight certain products because those products are what they're being those are like the sponsors of the channel, so of course they can't be critical of those products. So yeah, it's hard to get to the truth, because in this business, money drives the truth, and people will be very politically correct, and they won't say their opinion. So I hope that's the thing that you guys appreciate, me being so honest and telling it like it is, because I don't want to see any company out of business. I'm just saying things like they really are, because there seems to be a huge misunderstanding of what's really going on in the audio world, and I hope this really helps you guys. So yeah, have a nice day. Bye.